everybody. My dad thinks his podcast is amazing, so please subscribe, give it 5 stars or whatever, and maybe he'll finally stop talking about it. Anyways, welcome to Sober At.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Ryan. This is Jess. We are sober as fuck. Before we get to today's special guest, just want to remind everybody that if you're watching on Apple Podcast, or not watching, you'd be listening on Apple Podcast, watching on Spotify or YouTube, please make sure you're liking, subscribing, and sharing. Always share the podcast.
Make sure you're sharing.
Sharing is sharing.
Did you mention sharing?
I did mention sharing.
Quick trigger warning, we do talk about all of the topics, so prioritize your mental space. And if you hear something that starts making you feel a certain way, by all means, log off, take care of yourself. That is always priority number one. But assuming you stick around, we have some fun stuff today. I'm injured.
You are injured. Is it your foot or your knee?
I know. I don't know why I said my foot.
I know your knees hurt, but you said something about your foot earlier, so I'm confused now.
I don't know.
New shoes.
I've been out of my ADHD medicine for 2 days, not on purpose,
So
on an
that's what
accident.
hurt your knee.
So this will be a fun podcast. Who knows what's going to come out of this?
This is going to go off the rails quick.
I'm excited. One of two things is going to happen, and you never know what version of Jess you're going to get when she doesn't have her medicine. I'm either going to be completely silent like a weirdo.
Impossible.
Or
impossible.
I'm going to overshare, and you guys are going to know like about things you don't want to know about, like my sourdough starter.
Yeah, that's been the topic of the week in this house.
I am that white bitch.
That's right.
I started a sourdough starter. I made a sourdough starter. I've been a baking fool.
Trying to get me to gain all that weight back.
Why would I do that?
I don't know either, but they're damn good biscuits. I will say that.
My biscuits bring all the boys to the yard.
Apparently.
I'm hoping so.
We'll see.
I need some contingency plans in case something happens.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, so let's get to today's guest. Today's guest is Christopher Huber. I've known him for the past, probably about 2.5 years that we met on our sober platform, Reframe. He has a new 15-day program that I'm sure he's going to talk about, called Craving Crushers. It's a program that focuses on the urges and triggers of alcohol. So let's bring on our good friend, Christopher Huber. Hey, Christopher, how are you, buddy?
Good morning, Jess and Ryan. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Absolutely.
Thanks for being here.
Get you on the show finally, it seems like.
Absolutely.
Been a little bit. So, Christopher, give us the story of your relationship with alcohol, how it changed, kind of where it started.
Who are you?
Give us the backstory.
So you said we had 45 minutes.
You have as much
time as you want.
Did you hear me say I'm out without my ADHD meds? So for 2 hours.
This could be a while.
Excellent. Well, let's see. Gosh, there's so much, right? I really have to just kind of think about exactly where I want to start. And I think I'll start more recently and then probably, go back and kind of fill in things. But I guess I'd like to start with Reframe. Here was the thing during the pandemic, and just start off with a bam right away. I really turned to drinking quite a bit during the pandemic, and then also our daughter, 14 years old, she became pregnant in August of 2021, and that really, I just felt all this anger and fear, and it was overwhelming. And I went into over medicating lots, right? And so Reframe, March of 2022, so you know how Reframe is, right? Somehow it found me. right? And
Yeah.
maybe it was Facebook or something, but I responded. I was like, oh man, I think I need this. And that's how I got into Reframe. So I, downloaded the app, starting to hang out a little bit, realizing that I was in trouble. And I knew I was in trouble because I was stopping most days for a few drinks, have a drink or two at home. And, the pre-drinking was getting worse, lying to my family where I was, right? I mean, this kind of stuff. And so I tried Reframe. I lasted a couple weeks. And it was after my daughter delivering her child that there was a relief, right? And so I played with, trying to be sober-ish for a while through 2022, and, went in and out and discovered that I was a pretty serious gray area drinker. I had been dry at periods of my life in the past, and there's a lot of service with my history that maybe we can get into as well with people in recovery, and with me, my meditation and teaching meditation and mentoring people at the recovery house that I used to work at. So it's a complicated melange, right? As it often is. And so by the end of 2022, I was like, man, you know what? I need to stop drinking. I want, even more importantly, right? I want to stop drinking. And so I had a few glasses of wine the evening of December 31st, 2022. And I woke up 2023 and I did not go to friend's house where there's a champagne and caviar fest all day. And I was like, no, I'm starting this year different. And rehooked up with Reframe and got very active on it. Was a good boy, did all my daily readings and got very involved in the forum and, attending the Zooms, which, as you know, Ryan, the Zooms are incredible, right? That community that everything resonates so deeply and it's safe. And it was incredible, right? So made it about 6 months, pretty well, like, maybe a couple slips here or there, but doing very, very well. And then my wife and daughter went out of town in July of 2023. And I was like, I get to go out, right? There's that old voice that just kicked in. I'm like, I'm going to go out and have some fun. And I did. And it was bad. And I remember that night waking up and just kind of in this fog. But I mean, my esophagus was killing me. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to have to take myself to the emergency room. I mean, it was that bad. And I had never experienced that before. And I called off the next day for work, of course. And I was just like, holy shit, I'm just in a bad place. This is not good. And the next day, kind of reflecting, I thought, man, this is interesting. I've never felt this bad. And I didn't drink that much. I mean, I had several, beers and a couple margaritas kind of thing, but it wasn't like, I was like, I wonder, this is my body telling me this is poison, right? I've had made that 6 months without drinking as much. I'm like, holy shit, this is really what happens? This is the truth of what this stuff is? I was like, this is not good. This is not good. So I focused the rest of 2023 on being sober and just leaned in hard to Reframe, and always had meditation practice I've had for 20 years on and off. And there have been times where it was really, really super deep and impactful in my life, and when drinking happens, of course it's not, right? I mean, I tell myself I'm still meditating. So anyway, so the rest of 2023, I did pretty well. I turned 60 in October. I had a couple glasses of wine. But here's the thing. I thought, maybe I'll just moderate. Maybe I'll just have a couple glasses here and there. And the truth was, it wasn't what I found out is it wasn't that I found out I couldn't moderate. It was that I found out that I didn't want to moderate. And that was a big shift, right? I mean, that was like, wow, that was radical. And so for the rest of 2023, I really didn't drink that much, maybe once or twice. But I think it was maybe after my birthday in October, I was like, had that realization. I'm done. I don't want to moderate, and I'm done with this stuff. And then it became kind of landed that there was an identity thing happening with me. And that was, I would say, the final piece that kind of came together. because I've always worked in the hotel, restaurant, winery business, and drinking. And I'm a som and love wine, and I've traveled all over the world for wine and food, and it's like part of my identity. And all of a sudden it's like, no, that's not who I am though, right? And so there was a lot of work to be done there. So January 1st, 2024, I'm done, man. I'm done. And here we are, I don't know, 617 days later, something like that. And it's been amazing. Amazing.
That's incredible. So what was it like? When was the first time that a big presence of alcohol reared its ugly head? Like, did your parents drink? Was there a lot of alcohol around you? It's usually one or the other is what we've seen. Either people are like, alcohol was so normalized, everybody drank a lot, but I didn't know, or my parents never drank, and so it's like taboo, which, as a teenager makes you want to do it more.
Right.
So what did that look like?
Yeah. So here we go into the deep end, right? Have to go back to my childhood, and so big trigger warning around suicide and alcoholism coming up, everybody. So when I was 14 years old, I had my first mystical, I would call it, experience. I didn't have that word then, but now through my spirituality, I know that was this connection with the other side or something else in this other realm that we don't really have access to mostly. I was 14 years old, walking out of the house one morning. And as soon as I walked out the front door, broke the plane of the front door to step outside, I had this boom, your mom's going to take her own life today. It's like, where did that come from? Now, I was aware of a little bit of difficulty between my mom and dad, but it was nothing like it was on my radar at all, right? And so I'm walking up to the school bus up the hill in my old neighborhood, and I grew up in Michigan, and this voice keeps saying this, and I'm like stopping, turn around. Do I walk back? Well, keep walking to the bus stop, go to school all day, and this is with me all day. And I get off the bus to come home right after school, and I'm walking up the street, and I see my dad's car in the driveway of a really good friend of ours, and my dad's attorney and best friend. And I was like, holy shit, it happened. And Peggy, who is our friend's house where they were at, was my stepmom years later, but she's standing out front, and I can tell she's, holding herself with dire, look on her face. And I walk up to her and I go, she's like, oh, Christopher, come inside. We have something to tell you. And I'm like, you know what? I know what happened today. She's like, oh, honey, just please come inside. I walk in, my dad and Ken are sitting there. I'm like, I know what happened today, guys. Mom killed herself. You should have seen the look on their face, right? So that was the start that tipped my dad, not the start, but that was the tipping point for my father. I had not really known he was an alcoholic, and then he just went off the deep end. So it's been in my life all the time. And I've, remember, how you look back and you're like putting pieces together, and then stories and interactions start coming to mind. And so I'm from a family of generational alcoholism. My mom's dad, my dad's dad. So that trauma, that generational trauma, obviously has been part of my history, part of my DNA, however that works. And so, then through college, relationship with my father was terrible. I left his house, went to the courts, and had my brother and our custody taken away from my father, and we moved in with my uncle. And through the rest of high school and college, I really didn't live at home much. I lived with friends, my grandmother, friends that cared for me, and these were all people that were like, hey, you have a choice to make. You can go down the drain with your father, because that's probably what it looks like it's going to happen, or you can do something. You can choose something to take care of yourself. So I did. And then, high school happens and college happens. You start partying, and I fell completely head into it, right? And then after school, I was like, okay. After college, I was like, I'm leaving Michigan, right? I'm running as far away as I could. So I moved out to California. And the partying continued, and other things, and it continued for a long time, until probably the mid 2000s when when I got out of the corporate world and I joined a nonprofit, and I had been developing my spiritual practices and paying a lot of attention to that. And I was hired to join a team as a mobile ministries manager, and we would take care of housing the homeless at churches every night during inclement months, weather months here in California. So like October to March. And there's a recovery program. It was a residential recovery program, and that snapped me out because I was like, if I'm going to be doing this, I can't be drinking.
Mhm.
And so that really saved me. and I started going to AA then because I wanted to really understand what, my clients, I would call them, my guests, right, were going through, and knowing that, what, this is going to help me. I need this too. So that was my first experience with AA. And, I went to Al-Anon a lot as a kid and stuff like that. But that was the first time I really leaned into understanding alcoholism.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear
about
that about your mom.
your mom. But you talk a lot, and I've heard you talk a lot over the past couple of years about your spirituality. So I kind of wanted to dive deeper into
Yeah.
that as far as like the role that's played. Really it seems like from that moment,
Yeah.
that it happened, the kind of role that it's played to where you are now.
Yeah.
And also I want to get back to the nonprofit you were working too. You were working at did you say you were working at a winery before that? I mean, I didn't know what kind of switched you into that role.
Yeah. So let me maybe take that first, and then I'll go back to my spirituality.
Sure. Yeah.
So I worked in restaurants and hotels all my life. Went to Michigan State University, graduated from the School of Hotel Restaurant Management. So I was hired by a restaurant company, moved me out to California, and then I joined Marriott Hotels, and I worked for Marriott and Ritz-Carlton for 20 some odd years. Most of it as a direct employee, and then I consulted back for years. And so I was always, an operations hospitality guy, right? I mean, I was born to serve, right? I mean, service is in my blood, hospitality is in my blood. And so I transitioned from the corporate world of Marriott and Ritz-Carlton into wineries when we adopted our daughter in 2007 and brought her home, right? I didn't want to be an MIA dad on the, I was flying a couple 100,000 miles at one point, right? I was like, I want to be here for my daughter. So it's like, hey, I'm going to check out the winery business, because I had started to do some consulting in some wineries for sales training, hospitality, some leadership development. And one of the major wineries was a client of mine, and the owner walked me out to my car one day and said, I really like what you did with your program, and I need somebody to run my direct consumer business. Are you interested in talking about this at all? And I was like, yes, I am, right? And so that got me into the wine business in 2007. And so I managed wineries until 2013. And then 2013, something happened. This was after the Great Recession and all of that stuff. But something happened in me that was like, you know what, this isn't fulfilling. So I guess here's the tie into my spirituality kind of story or journey, is that I'm not being fulfilled anymore by being in this. It was less corporate, of course, but the business world. I was like, I'm looking for more. And so I had two very terrible experiences where I was let go from two different businesses as well. And so that was like a big invitation. I was like, okay, here's an opportunity for me to lean into my spirituality and develop that. So I remember I was sitting in church one day, and there was a guy that came up and was talking about community outreach and this place called Redwood Gospel Mission in Santa Rosa, California. I live in Sonoma County, and he was talking about being a mentor there. And I just remember sitting there listening to him, and I remember kind of like my body was moving. I was rocking as I was sitting. I was like, what's going on? I'm aware of this, right? And I was like, I am interested in being a mentor to people who are in a recovery program. Wait a second. That's my trauma. There's a problem with this. I don't want to do that, right? Isn't that how it works though? And so I was like, I had nothing to lose, right? And I was so tired of being a slave to. I would freak out at any uncertainty because of my upbringing as a child of an alcoholic, right? Uncertainty is like one of your biggest things. It's like, I can't handle it. I can't handle it. I was like, I'm going to throw myself in. I had this image of like a boxer throwing himself back into the ring. Like, you get your ass beat, pummeled, you get up and you get back in the ring. And that was kind of this feeling that I had. So I went through the mentor training program and started mentoring guys there. And this is when, like I said, that was really, I stopped drinking. And I wasn't doing too bad up till that point. Like I said, the pandemic and my daughter's pregnancy was what kind of pushed me or invited me back into it, to the deep end. So I started working 2014 as a mentor, volunteer, actually, not working. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This is real. And I was very aware that, out of my trauma, I'm being served, right? I felt like I was the one who was getting the most from it, right? It's just beautiful how that happens. And so there was a position of this mobile ministries manager that came up, and I was like, man, I have all the hospitality and the training background. And so I said, I interviewed for it and got it. And so we worked with 30 churches every night from October to March. And I was responsible for, all the training of our volunteers, that we would do intake, and we would do all of the logistics and coordinating. I would go do training at the churches to, what's it like to, have conversations and boundaries with, unhoused people, and, if this happens and that happens. So I just went fully into it. I was like, man, this is feeding my soul incredibly. So I did that for a year and a half, and then there was this place called the Journey Center here in Santa Rosa. And part of my spirituality, my wife and I began taking personal retreats back all the way in 2000, and this was a response to, there's something deeper calling us here. And I'm not sure what that was. And again, I didn't have language for it back then, but we just started taking retreats, and whether that would be out in, the mountains here in the Sierras, or we would go to a monastery and have just quiet time. And that ignited something within me. So at the end of the Redwood Gospel Mission service that I did, that's when I got into a program it was a 2-year program to become a spiritual director. And so spiritual director spiritual direction is something that's across a lot of wisdom traditions. And what I mean by that is, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, and it's really an accompaniment with someone to help kind of, hear the Spirit's voice, hear God's voice, whatever we want to call that, in a way that allows them to go deeper in, whether it's discernment or learning spiritual practices or getting through a transition in life. And I was like, I had been a client for spiritual direction for about a year now. So I was like, man, I want to do that. So I went through the program, and just absolutely loved it. And the program's incredible because, as you can imagine, the teachers are amazing, read zillions of books. And most importantly, there's a lot of experiential learning that you do there. And we also led retreats. So we designed and led retreats. And I was like, this is the best. I have a training background with Marriott and Ritz-Carlton. So that whole training piece of me was really fed with that. So, and then I became the executive director of this center afterwards. And so I was being led, right? And this was just fantastic. And then the reality of working for a nonprofit after 4 years came in, and I was like, I need to make some money for my family. So I got back in the wine business, but I didn't go back into leadership because I was like, I'm done with leadership. And so I got back in the wine business, and went well for a while. That was 2018. And then, like I said, 2020, the wheels came off.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a background in nonprofit work as well. I actually worked in nonprofit healthcare, particularly women's health, for 12 years. And that's what I was doing when Ryan and I met. And I remember making a joke with him, right? Because I was like, I'm really glad that you have a sustainable career, because I'm never going to make any money. And I thought that I would be doing that work forever and ever and ever. So I know how I know that tug on your heart. And it is hard grind work. I mean, there's no 40 hours a week. It is constant. There's always someone who needs help. There's always something that's underfunded. There are
Yeah.
always donors that you're chasing after. I mean, there's always new laws going into place that could affect, the money that you're taking in
Yeah.
and dispersing and all of those things. Um, and I planned on doing that forever and ever and ever as well. I get that. And we had our daughter, she's now 14.
Uh-huh.
And when she was about, I don't know, 6, 7 years old, something like that, he had now taken a job that required him to travel a
True.
lot.
Mm.
And we didn't really have a whole lot of family here. And the family we did have wasn't able to like help out as far as picking up and dropping off and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So, my moment that I knew it was time for me to move on was I showed up to pick my daughter up from aftercare at her school. And I showed up right as they were closing because I had to stay. We had to see all our patients. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know how that is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there are times where you cannot leave. Like, it's not an option. And, she was bawling, crying because she thought that I had forgotten her. She was the last one there.
Mm.
And I called my husband and I said, I don't know what this looks like long term, but I'm going to have an exit strategy. I love this, but how it is.
Yeah.
He was making way more money than me, but I was working way more hours than he was. And so I was taking her to work with me. She was going to the office with me during the summer, things like that. So that was the moment that I knew, like, I
Mm.
love this work,
Mm-hmm.
but I love my daughter.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
right. I mean, cause he's like, well, we could hire a sitter at this side. I was like, okay, well, I might as well not. I mean,
Yeah.
100%.
Because there's no money. 100% of it would cover
Yeah,
the debt.
I mean, and I switched nonprofits too, because when I got pregnant with my daughter towards the end of my pregnancy, we were talking about that too. He's like, listen, you could work till your wheels fall off. He's always been supportive of that. He said, but I just want to point something out to you that if you want to continue working, which you can do, you're working to pay for daycare, which is completely fine, right? Like, but that's how little you make in nonprofit. I mean, now daycare is expensive, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But 100% of my check. So I stayed home with her for 18 months and then I went back because I realized that I was either going to smother him in his sleep or go crazy because I got jealous and I was like, you get to take a 15-minute shower and like
Right.
brush your teeth and go talk to people. But I get that. And I've had little moments where I've reached out to be like, maybe I should volunteer. Maybe I should do this because it's something that pulls at you. So when we started this podcast, when he got sober and we started this, I remember after about 6 months, I sat down with him and I said, I feel like this is home again. I went into real estate, so I had a flexible schedule and I love doing that. And I help a lot of like, low income first time home buyers, and that's great. But this really is what sort of circled that back because that's essentially what we do in this is nonprofit work. So
Right.
I get that. And it speaks to you. I mean, big time, big time. If I were not married and had no children, I mean, before I met him, I was like, I don't care going at 6 a.m. and get off at 9. Like, what the hell else do I have to do? And it's so rewarding. And it's just, I get it. Like I think that it healed me and taught me, like it chose me. So hearing your story, I fully resonate with that. But right, when you have a family to support, you're like, well, shit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, those 4 years really opened me up to, what I'll call my second half of life, right? The first half of life when you're kind of ego based and you're working through this stuff and you're chasing. I was making great money and had a great job, and big titles and all this stuff, right? And I was like, no, that's not the stuff that's important. That's not the stuff that's important anymore.
And the empathy it gives you for people and the reality check too, like you can think that you are the most understanding, kind-hearted, faithful, whatever person. And then you sit with people and you you hear their stories and you walk through them,
Yes.
and you realize how life is 100% always in these gray areas, and these judgments that we make on people based on these little pieces of information. If anything, I found myself, and to this day, like he'll kind of like warn people when they talk to me about,
Mm.
you know, reproductive health or addiction or you know, financial situations, anything like that, because we dealt with everything, refugees, all the things. He'll tell people, he's like, now listen, you can talk to her about that if you want to, but just understand, like, I mean, I have to tone it down because I get very protective. I'm like, well,
You're passionate. Yeah,
well, it's also
very
too
passionate.
desperate people, you know, I hate to say damaged, but people who are hurting, people who are struggling, people who are sick. Unfortunately, that results in what the outside facing world would perceive as bad behavior or questionable. But when you really are like in the depths with people, it just, I mean, it really does open you up, and ultimately makes you a better person to be like, listen, I've said this on previous podcasts, life is hard, even for people who are born into and have all the things working in their favor. The only thing that's guaranteed is we don't get out unscathed or untraumatized or anything like that. So when you have people who are in marginalized groups and things are working against them, even if their own brains, it's just, people are not very kind. And that's what it really taught me is be kind, be compassionate. So I'm your soul sister on that one.
I hear that, Jess. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's where I always felt like I was receiving so much more than I was giving. Right. And that changes you. I mean,
yeah, big time. I wanted to go back to, it towards the beginning when you were talking about, you know, kind of where your journey's come today from when you joined Reframe. And it's something we haven't really talked a whole lot about on the podcast, but so you had like basically like an intentional, you know, slip, detour, whatever you want to call it.
It was a relapse,
you know,
right?
When,
It was like
or a relapse.
It was
whatever you want to call it.
It was clearly a relapse.
And I, you know, it doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but you know, I find it interesting the way you described it, because I've heard people talk about it, and I'm like, and I think more people need to hear about it. You know, you've drank for so long, and then you take this time off, and your body's healing, right? And then you think, okay, well, now I can do this, and now I can moderate. And it's interesting you said the word poison, because you put this stuff in your body, and if you can think back, which I don't know if a lot of people can, to the first time you really had a drink and the way your body reacts to it. And there's a reason you throw up when you drink too much of it, right? It's because it's fucking killing your body. So I really found that interesting, because when you do go so long without it, and you decide, you know, or something happens, that little devil on your shoulder says, oh, you can do it. And then you try to go back to it. But the problem is there is no moderation, because you just think, oh, I can go back and drink 10 beers or whatever it is that your drink of choice. And then, wow, does it fuck yourself, from what I've heard. I mean, I haven't personally gone through that, but from what I've heard, it's just like, wow, it put me out for 2 or 3 days. I wanted to vomit. I can't believe I put this poison in my body again.
Absolutely.
To me, that's just, to me, I don't know. Me personally, I know I can't do it, because one leads to God knows how many. I'll never stop until I kill myself. But that had to be like just a huge eye-opening thing to you, especially because it was more of a planned thing, right? To you, was it not? More of a planned thing?
That
just had to be a huge eye-opening thing. Like, I got to quit this shit. This is not doing me any good.
Absolutely. And that's why I clearly said relapse, because, you know, slip is like occasionally, like if you have a drink, you're like not planning on it, and you're like, oh, no, that's not what I do. But a relapse is, or I guess the kind of definition is more so about like abandoning your sobriety, right? Deliberately, like, I'm going, man. And I was like,
Yeah.
that night, I was like, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to get hammered. I'm going to just, I was like, I don't know what it was. Part of it, I think, is just my wife and daughter were gone. It's like, come here, you're right. And I just went full in. And so, like I said, that night, I felt like shit. I had never, my esophagus was burning. I was, I was concerned so much. I was like, I need to go to the hospital, I think. And so that scared me, obviously. Right. And what's funny is you mentioned, first experience or something, when my mom was still alive. So this was probably a month or so before she died. I remember my first drunk. It was over at a friend's house, of course. And I drank so much bourbon that they wheeled me home in a wheelbarrow. Okay. And put me to bed. Right. And my mom got home and I had vomited everywhere, of course, in my bed. Thank God they put me on my side. I mean, we're kids. How do they know to do that?
Yeah,
My mom and dad take me to the hospital and they're like, pump his stomach. And I remember vaguely the doctor going, no, we're not going to have to do that. He's fine. He just needs to sleep it off. But that was the first time. And that night in 2020, was that 2023? Yeah, 2023 when I did that. That came back. It was like, that's where the poison is, right? It was like, this is actually going to kill your body. It's what it's doing right now. That's why you feel so crappy.
Oh yeah.
We hear that, but unless you feel that, you don't kind of buy into it maybe or fully
and
accept
that's
it.
the thing. Yeah, you
Yeah.
hear a lot of people talk about it, but you really don't know it until it actually happens. That's for sure.
Emphasize alcohol
Absolutely.
too, right? Like even in, and we've talked about this a ton, but even in movies, like there's the whole joke about like the kid taking their first sip of beer and
Right.
like spitting it out, you know what I mean? Like, "Ugh, that's gross." And everybody like heckling him.
Right.
Well, it is fucking disgusting. Like and I have friends who like are tequila, whatever, and this, that, and they make a lot of money and they travel the world and they taste
Right.
and they blah, 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 blah. Okay. So I'm not trying to discredit any of that. It's not my speed, but whatever.
Yep.
I used to tell him, because he was a big bourbon drinker. And so he would always, spend the money, do the things in the glasses, pinky up, it's a whole like whatever thing it is. And he would always be like, you got to taste this. You got to taste this. And I would taste it, and he's like, I'm not kidding. It goes down so smooth. It's so good. And I'd taste it. I'd be like, battery acid is so good. Ooh, ah. I mean, and that's true, right? Because it doesn't.
Yeah.
It does not taste good. It does not go down smooth. I don't care how old it is. I don't care if there's some lineage of like, like Jesus Christ himself blessing it,
Right.
and it's like, that's the thing is, no, it's not. And just, I'm going to digress for a minute, but I think you'll appreciate this, Christopher. So I grew up in going to all Christian schools, like Southern Baptist, all the things. Yeah. And so as I got older, I sort of rejected that.
Sure.
Because I like white, Southern, conservative Baptist, right? So I had my own journey. And with that, I decided I wanted to study, religion. And so I really started seeking out like more of like the history of things, because I'm also very like analytical. So I can accept things, but I also need to know the why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things is, well, Jesus turned water into wine. And I'm like, yeah, but back then the water quality wasn't very good. And a lot of the fruits were becoming naturally fermented. And the life expectancy was like 25 years old and pretty terrible. So sure, given under an umbrella of nothing but like disease and pain and suffering, then maybe alcoholism is acceptable. But thank goodness we're civilized people now. And we no longer have to do that because we have something called science and medicine.
Yeah.
It's like anything that you feel like you have to convince yourself and the world has to convince you is good for you or okay.
Yeah.
Is more than likely not. Okay. And I consider myself a spiritual person too, but I always kind of throw that with people too. I'm like, well, let's consider the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you'd want to drink the water then, anyways.
That's right.
Okay. So turning it into wine was probably the only way that it could be sterilized and safe to drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Chris, let's talk about what you're doing now,
Mm.
actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you came up with this 15-day program,
Yeah.
the Craving Crushers. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about that and where people can find it?
Well, thank you. It was really born when, I got on my sobriety program and I started really leaning into Reframe and, just wanting to be a voice on the forum and doing speaker shares that would support people because, again, I was born to serve, right? That's my thing.
Mhm.
And so I consider my sobriety a spiritual practice now, right? I mean, that truly is, along with my meditation, along with prayer, along with fasting, along with taking retreats, anything that kind of builds into that for me. And I'm like, well, you know what? This is funny. I had served from this place before with mentoring guys going through recovery. And I'm like, I think this is what I'm being called to do. I think I know this is what I'm being called to do. So I developed a program just as being in swimming in this soup for 2.5 years with Reframe and, listening to podcasts like yours and other ones, Sober Awkward, and other great podcasts with great humor, reading a bunch of Quit Lit books. I've always been a neuroscience kind of geek in the past, like 10 years since that really has exploded. And, that's part of the whole thing that Reframe is based on, right? So I'm like, man, I want to be able to serve people in this space of sober curiosity and exploring your relationship. I love how you said that too, Ryan, because that's exactly, it's like sober curious people. There's a lot of us in the world who maybe are not alcoholic, but gray area and knowing, man, this isn't serving me, right? So I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a try. And so I developed the 15-day Dry Right Now experiment. And so it is a downloadable PDF and self-guided, kind of in soulful coaching with my personal story and some neuroscience and psychology of habits and all of this woven together to really lead somebody through taking a pause. You don't have to stop forever. This is, hey, people scratch their head going, I think I need to pause this. 15 days sounds like I can do this, right? And so that's the program that I've launched. And then the Craving Crushers was a specific piece of that, right? Because I also have a bounce back plan, because that's one thing I thought was missing. We don't really talk about, okay, I've had a slip, I've had a relapse. How do I get back from this? That doesn't seem to be talked about as much. So that's one of the bonuses I offer is this bounce back plan and how we get past that and the kind of reflective, space that you get into and they're kind of coaching questions to lead you through that. Then the second bonus, Craving Crushers. And the third bonus, and this is something that I would say really helped transform me, is self-forgiveness and self-compassion. We are so damn hard on ourselves, right? And this really comes, I think, out of my interest in Buddhist psychology. Jack Kornfield, one of the fantastic teachers in the West here that brought Buddhism to the West, decades ago. I've listened to a lot of things and gone to some of his programs. And he always said about self-compassion is treat yourself like you would treat a puppy who's learning how to potty train. He says, that puppy you put on the paper and you're like, okay, baby, come over here. This is where you go potty. You don't go, get the fuck over there and go to the bathroom on the paper, you stupid thing, right? And yet that's how we do this to ourselves, right? And so the self-compassion, self-forgiveness is a huge piece. So those three bonuses are part of the 15-day Dry Right Now experiment. So the Craving Crushers, so the title of this is a simple tools to tame cravings, urges, and triggers, right? Because they're a little different from each other. So there's a bunch of tools in this Craving Crushers bonus. And that's what I want to offer listeners today is something I'd love to give you. And it's just like 8 pages and it talks about these different tools and some of the mindset and some of the self-talk that can kind of get you out of whoop, I recognize that's a trigger. I recognize, oh, that's an urge that came out of nowhere, man. What do I do with that? And so I'll tell you one thing that really helped me. And this is one of those things where I didn't think this up. this came from somewhere else, right? So one of my things was I would go to Whole Foods to shop before I got home, and there was a tap room in this Whole Foods, right? I was like, that's perfect, man. Sit and watch basketball, have 3 beers, pre-game, go home, have a bottle of wine, martini, and I'm good, right? So when I finally said, man, you cannot do that. What I started doing was, and I'm not sure where this came from, but I was like, I'm not going to go in. I'm just going to drive around the parking lot. I'm going to drive around the Whole Foods store and not go in. And I'm going to widen my circle and go out onto the road. And after, 10 minutes of doing this, that craving was gone. And we know this, right? We know cravings are temporary. And so that was a tool that I was given. I don't say I developed it, and it worked for me so much so that was one of the key things that allowed me to be able to say, okay, I'm not going. And then of course, you stop going to Whole Foods where the tap room is, right?
That's right.
It's like, that's obvious. But, when you're in that mode, you need something, you need these baby steps to get out, right? So anyway, so that's really what the Craving Crushers are about. I also talk about kind of the self-talk that we do, it's that urge or that craving that's like, oh man, wouldn't one glass of wine taste really good right now? And like, oh, wait a second. I recognize that voice. That's not the new me. That's the old me talking. And instead of going, it's like, oh, I recognize you. And you know what? We're just not doing, that's not who we are anymore. And so that compassionate self-talk, that's how we would treat a friend, right? I mean, that's how I would respond to you guys. You said, oh man, I'm having a hard time. So that's just a couple examples of things that I have in there to get past these urges and triggers and cravings that can pop up. So love to share that.
Yeah,
I love that too.
I love all of it. It was that was big for me, and like you said, it's nothing we've come up with, right? I mean, all this stuff is borrowed or taken or stolen, or however you want to say.
Yeah.
We've all taken it from different programs and kind of put it together. But it's great to have that source to go to. For me, it was I'd never really had cravings or triggers. Once I said this was it.
Yeah, you stopped, didn't you, Ryan? You were like, I'm done.
I did.
Yeah.
I stopped, which was very unusual, especially with the amount that I drank. I don't know how I was able to do that.
I was always pissed at people like you on Reframe that were able to do that.
That's right. But there was a lot more work behind the scenes than people think.
Obviously.
And that's what I wanted to talk about real quick was, on the meetings, you pick up little things that people say, right? You put it together.
Big time.
And that was one thing I learned was taking a different route home, which was huge to me.
Yeah.
Learning to stay away from places that I was used to. NA beers was kind of a big thing for me because it took that craving away from actually wanting, the thing with alcohol in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I picked up a lot from that, and what you're putting out is phenomenal, because people with those urges and cravings, and they're very limited. They could last 2 minutes. They could last, at the most 15 to 20 minutes, but that small little thing like that you put out there, somebody's going to grab that and do it.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, just, Jess and I we're guilty of it. We used to go to Kroger down the road and they put a bar in.
Right.
And the next thing you know, we're sitting there bellied up at the bar with a kid in a cart.
Right.
Like, what the hell are we doing? Looking back on it, what the hell were we doing? This is insane.
And I'd also like to say too, something that a lot of people don't talk about, just to kind of normalize it and make it more palatable, is everyone, no matter what, has intrusive thoughts, has weird thoughts, all of that. And I think it's being more talked about. And it's one of those things where I will preface by saying this is not an actual thought, like whatever. But it's like one of those things where I'm driving on the road, and for a split second, and it's not real, you'd be like, I wonder if I just went, oop, like, and it's not a suicidal thought. It's not anything.
Right.
Just like, it's a weird,
comes in your head.
Right. Like, and they have like funny, like TikTok videos on it now where they'll be cooking and it'll be like thinking about like, what would happen if I cut my hand off? But it's like such a like quick, like it's not even a full second. And it's just your brain playing little tricks on you. And also for the neuroscience, it's kind of your brain like preparing for worst case
worst case
scenarios in order to protect you. But, you know, I don't really want to cut my hand off or drive off of a road.
Right.
That's why I said that's not happening.
Yeah.
But if everyone has these weird, intrusive thoughts, so to have a craving or to have this feeling that you want to do something self-harm, you know, it depends on how long it lasts and it depends on what follow-up it is, right? So it just makes it a little easier for people to understand that the cravings you have with alcohol when you struggle, it's the same as like having that, you know, I wonder if my family would come and visit me if I got in a car accident. I don't want to die, but just bad enough to be in the hospital for a couple weeks. And would they miss me? And would they like know how like irreplaceable I am just because you're exhausted and you feel like you're not being appreciated as a wife and mother? You don't want it to happen. But unfortunately, yeah, sometimes there's follow through. Something else I wanted to touch on is I love your program because some people, when they relapse, they need to start back at square one. They need to wipe it out. They need a fresh start. That's what works for them.
Absolutely.
For me, and this is just how my brain works, and a large majority of other people, you don't want to feel like all of the work you did is just gone. So like, because I made a mistake, because I'm human and I made an honest mistake, all of the days, months, years of hard work I put in is just erased. Well, of course not. So I like your program because it's like, okay, if you need to go all the way back to square one and take those baby steps and wipe it out, we can do that. But it doesn't mean like you still have the recipe. Just because you underbaked it or put one too many eggs or made it a little too moist doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. Take a beat.
I love that.
And start over.
I love that. That's oh my gosh, you know, so that's kind of that self-compassion and self-forgiveness piece in there as well, right? 2023, I made it like I forget, but I think I counted 280 days out of the 365, and I was like, Christopher, that's fantastic. Are you kidding me? You've never come anywhere near that. You've never. So you have to own that, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of people that we've met, you know, on Reframe, Christopher, that started out, you know, because they have the cutback program or the alcohol free, and it's amazing the percentage, which is very high, of the people that started out on cutback, and then, you know, with the tools, the meetings, the really just the changes that someone notices by cutting back, the better sleep, health. To decide, you know what, alcohol's not for me anymore. I'm going to go alcohol free. There's a huge percentage of people that have started out that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's
and I'll also say, oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
I say, you know, it's not about not drinking. That's where you kind of get to, right? It's not about not drinking. It's about stepping into yourself as who you are and your full life and presence and relationships and health and sleep. And it's like, duh, but you have to get there, man. There's no.
You finally got to get to that moment in your head where it's like, yep, this is it.
And
I'm
it
done.
takes
Drinking
times.
is a symptom. It's a symptom of the problem.
Exactly.
And also, you know, this is not to take accountability off of the person, because that's important too. But, you know, we are bred as an entire world. Like, this is not something that is a westernized thing or an Americanized thing. Like, this is not a segregated issue. As an entire world, as a planet, alcohol is romanticized, normalized. It's part of adolescence and learning. And you cannot underestimate how heavy that is too. So with those relapse or those slips, right? Like, we talk about kids and peer pressure. Well, that peer pressure, it doesn't ever really go away.
No,
like,
never does.
you know, no matter how old you are, it's like inside I'm still just that little 12-year-old kid who wants to be part of the cool kids group, right? Like, that's how it is. And so when you see these things, it's also not wanting to be weakness. So you're like, but okay, but I'm strong now. So I can have a drink and I can control it without it controlling me. So you get in this loop of trying to convince yourself that you are powerful and you're going to be okay. And when you're not, then you go back into that shame cycle. Well, the reason I can't moderate is because I'm just weak.
Right.
I'm just a weak.
I'm broken. There's something wrong with me.
I'm broken.
Yeah.
And that's not true at all.
Well, my thing was I figured, well, I'm an alcoholic anyway. I might as well just go ahead.
Right. What's in my genetics?
Or
It's this, it's that.
It's as you said, Christopher, it's a generational thing, and you just accept it. And
right.
That can really bring you back down.
Well,
sure.
and this will make you a little less pissed at Ryan. What isn't shown is he actually did quit drinking multiple times before this last time. He's been to AA. He's been to jail. I have filed for divorce and kicked him out of the house. Like, we've had a long story of that. So I wouldn't call them relapses, because I don't think that sobriety was really, I think it was more of a performative action. But there's been those ups and downs. You know, I would say you didn't stop drinking just the first time you stopped drinking.
Oh, no, God, no. No, I had many attempts where
I'm so relieved.
But they were, but they weren't, they weren't like, attempts where I said, you know what, this is it. It was like to please somebody else or to get somebody off my back kind of shit. But once I decided, and it took a long time for me to get to that point, that I've realized I've taken my last drink of alcohol. It actually made it easier. Absolutely. It really did. Absolutely. It was just getting to that point took so long.
That's the tipping point, right? I mean, that's it. And then how good do you feel when you say that and you go, I'm done.
And when you put voice to it, and and that's the thing was, no matter, I hear this a lot, a lot of people are like, man, I'm nervous to tell my family. I'm nervous to tell friends and things like that. For me, it was great because I got it off my chest. And I'm like, I don't care what you think. This is the way I'm going to be.
Right.
I think people get nervous because they're like,
they're afraid
what if I fail?
Yeah, disappointing somebody.
What if I fail?
There's a lot of reasons.
So I mean, I mean, I get that because I quit drinking almost a year and a half ago, not because I had an issue with alcohol, but I had an issue with alcohol as in it had about killed and bullied and taken everything from my life. And I've used this analogy many times, but I'm like, alcohol was like having a couple that is yours and your wife's best friends in the whole wide world. You guys have grown up together, do everything together. And then you find out one of them is like brutally beating and abusing the other. Do you remain friends with the abuser? It's an individual thing, but for me, no. Why do I want to partake in and still remain friends with this thing that has abused every person I love and care of? No. So absolutely, I didn't have to have a problem with alcohol to have a problem with alcohol. Like, so when I think of alcohol, I think about it as like, fuck you. You literally have about killed the people in my life who I love and adore. I don't want you in my house. Get the fuck out. I have a restraining order against alcohol. That's how I feel about it.
So just this whole notion of, afraid to quit for what people will think and all this stuff. So here's something crazy. You ready for this? So I live in wine country, right? You know this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it runs like water here. And it's like, there's something wrong with you if you don't drink wine, kind of, I mean, it's unsaid, but anyway. I still work in the wine business. I do tours. I stopped while working in the wine industry.
That's incredible.
Which is just hard to believe. I remember when you told me that. I was like, holy shit.
I taste sometimes 50 wines a day because I open bottles in the morning for the day and I spit. I mean, that's what you do anyway, right? Because otherwise you'd be. But that's another thing. It's like, man, it's just that's how I know this is all from somewhere else. This is just not me.
It is. It is. And that's vastly different too, because that's a career, right? And it's also like the fact that you do that, you must feel like a badass motherfucker every day when you come home. I would look in the mirror and I would be like, you are the strongest motherfucker alive.
That's right.
Do you have any idea how amazing you are? And a lot of people listening out there will be like, oh my God, I could never do that. Yes, you can.
Yeah, you can.
Yes, you can. You can do anything you want. You really, really can. And I agree with that. Like, I'm about neuroscience and all that too. But at the same time, there are some things that supersede us, and not in the traditional sense, but giving into that, you're not a very spiritual person, but even Ryan in his sobriety has been like, I don't know if it's just the universe or somebody out there working in my favor. You can't ignore that when you make better decisions from the right place, opportunities,
things happen.
present themselves because
100%.
you're listening for them too,
Yeah.
because you're drowning out the
You're
noise and you're
noticing more.
listening
Absolutely.
and you're noticing.
Absolutely. And not only that, there's a lot of people who are sober curious in the wine industry. There's a lot of people who are worried that they drink too much, right? And this is interesting because some people at work, I remember the first time I went out and like didn't have a drink, and people were like, not like, oh man, what's up with, they were like, oh, tell me more about that. Like, wow, how'd you do that? It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, and you usually when you ask yourself that question, that's usually when you got a problem. You just don't realize it. But
or they usually will say like, I mean, I probably drink too much, but it's fine. I'll have a problem.
Yeah.
Well, Christopher, before we get you out of here, and thank you so much for joining us.
Man.
So we always ask all our guests, you got to go back and give us a funny story from back in your drinking days. And if it involves somebody peeing, I mean, it's even better. But
and it could be someone else's.
It could be
funny
someone else's story.
You could have just been there.
That's right. But you got to give us a good story.
Well, so here's the thing. I've been thinking about this because I watched the podcast, so I know you asked this question, right? So I was thinking about this, and I have to go back to college. I went to Michigan State University, so wintertime is brutal, right? I mean, there's snow. And I remember this one night where tequila was the, was the item. Jessica's shaking her head exactly. And
I should have named my daughter Tequila, if you know what I'm talking about.
And I remember waking up in the morning one time in a snowbank, and they had like made snowmen around me and like decorated them, right? And there's me and all of these snowmen, and I wonder, like, someone must have taken a picture of me at some point. I never maybe I did, but that was what came up, and I was pretty cold when I woke up, obviously.
Oh, I'm sure.
You're like, am I dead? I'm dead.
Right.
Am I dead?
Right?
I'm really cold. Am I dead?
Everything was white around me, right? I'm like, how did this?
This is it.
What is it exactly? It's the white light.
And I hope that you take that little nugget, because as you were talking about your program, I was thinking about this question. I didn't want to say anything until we got to it, but this ties perfectly into your program too, because as far as the reason we ask our guests this is it's a way to be kind to yourself. Yeah. Some of our best memories are from when we were drinking, good or bad, right or wrong, some of our most cherished memories. And you do not have to let go of those or erase them in order to understand where you are now. Multiple things can exist. And if you cannot laugh at yourself, and if you cannot understand that you were just a human trying to survive and giggle about it, then you miss the whole point. So that is a great story. I hope, if nothing else, you can use that and remind people that I do embarrassing, dumb shit stone cold sober.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So,
ask my
if
daughter.
you can't laugh at yourself, then.
Well, Christopher, thank you so much for joining us on the show, man. We really, really appreciate it. I'm glad we finally got to put this together.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.
So much.
Thank you. I love you guys. You guys are wonderful. You're doing this important work, and thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks so much,
All
Christopher.
right.
Appreciate it.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Christopher.
All right.
If you love the podcast, which I know you do, please like, subscribe,
and hit that notification bell to get
Boom.
notified every time we post.
That's right. Dropping them, baby. Word.